Come on in. Stay a while. It's time to get coached up with another edition of the Coach Scott Field Show. You might be watching us on DBTV, a national and international cable network that's a first of its kind. And I'm thrilled to share with you all, we are now in 300 million households around the globe. See us on DBTV at 1 o'clock Eastern Time, Monday through Friday. Or you could be seeing us on CSTV on Thursdays at 7 o'clock, or the Rewind Sports 60 sports network and channels. Thank you for choosing us for your viewership options. I'm blessed, humbled, and beyond grateful. If you're listening to us in podcast form, my special guest today, Joel Freeman, and I say, turn that knob up. Let us put that flavor in your ear. That's right. You're about to be coached up with another edition of the Coach Scott Field Show. And for all the algorithms out there, let me get the business out of the way. Like and follow us on the Coach Scott Field Show Facebook page, and also smash that subscribe button on our Coach Scott Fields YouTube channel. Thank you so much for being with us this afternoon. Got an outstanding guest lined up for you today. This handsome gentleman sitting right next to me, Mr. Joel Freeman. Joel, welcome to the show, my friend, and God bless.
Scott, it's so good to be here. I can't wait. I just ask the questions, any questions, and let's go.
Oh, let's do it. Well, it's fascinating to me because you and I have been in contact for multiple years, and I love how you were the NBA's first team chaplain. How did that process start for you, and where did it even kind of manifest itself in your mind to be like, hey, I'm going to create a market and I'm going to go out and serve and help others?
Well, first of all, I wasn't the first definite article. I was one of the first. Probably as I've been researching this, I've interviewed probably about 60, 65 people, managers, coaches, players, wives, children, and people all around, front office administrators. And I figured there's probably about two or three of us that were starting right around the same time in the 78-79 season. So, but to get to your question specifically, what happened is, in fact, I've talked to a whole lot of chaplains, and not one of them has angled in on becoming a chaplain. It has always happened serendipitously. So it's one of those situations when someone comes to me and says, I'd like to become a chaplain in the NBA or NFL or wherever, MLB. And I say, well, from all my research, if you desire it, it's probably not going to happen.
So, yeah, go ahead. How were you able to kind of create those relationships and get in with the Washington franchise?
Well, there's a friend of mine, Bill Alexson, who he was working with the Celtics at the time. And it was Kevin Porter and Alvin Hayes that came out to a pregame meeting with the Celtics and the Bullets. And so what happened is at the end of the meeting, they said to my friend Bill, hey, we'd like to have this down in the DC area. And he said, well, I know a guy. His name is Joel Freeman, and this is all pre-digital. So there's no cell phone numbers. It's all home numbers. So it took us about 3 weeks for Kevin and I to get together. And we had lunch. I can still shut my eyes and see the place where we met for lunch, what we talked about. And then I met with Bob Ferry. And Bob Ferry, he's looking at me, giving me the stank eye. And I love Bob to pieces. But if you know Bob, he can be was a little rough around the edges at times, So what happened? He had to be that way with his position. But he said, well, if they want it, the players want it. He says, there's nothing I can do to stop it right now. But kind of like I'm going to keep my hairy eyeball on you. I found out later. I was flying down to speak in Dallas, Texas. And suddenly I heard this voice say, hey, Rev. And it was Bob Ferry going down. I think Danny, I can't remember what team he was with at the time, was asking his dad to go and scout a potential player down in the Dallas-Fort Worth area. So we ended up sitting together on that entire flight, about from Baltimore to is about maybe 2.5 hours. And I asked him, I said, Bob, what were you thinking? What were you feeling in those early days? Because, I was 25, had no mentor. I looked like I was 16, 17 years of age. And I'm messing with these guys' minds an hour before tip off. And so he's looking at me like, I'm not sure about you. But he told me that he was afraid of me. I said, what? Are you kidding me? You're afraid of me? He said, yeah, because you're messing with their minds an hour before tip off. And I didn't know you could be talking about something stupid like, it's all spiritual. Doesn't matter what happens on the court and blah, 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 So he said that he actually put his ear up to the door about maybe a half dozen times just to check in to see what I was saying to the players. And he told me on that flight, he said, I kind of liked what you're talking about, But he said, if you're saying something wacky and weird, I was going to come right in and grab you by the scruff of your neck and haul you up those stairs at the old Cat Center and throw you out the door, never to return again.
Wow.
Glad you didn't tell me back then. I would have shriveled up and died.
Oh my, great story. But it fascinates me to think, I mean, here's this guy originally from Canada, doesn't have an NBA team, but yet you have such an interest in working with people, serving people, helping people find, spiritual balance in their life. How do you sell that, and create a market? I mean, just like with Bob, to say, hey, I'm of value to you, and here's what I can bring to you and your players to help build up this franchise.
It really wasn't. I don't even know if it was that transactional or even missional. For me, it was an opportunity, and I decided that I was. I guess what motivated me to want to do this and then to continue to do it was that I thought if I can reach one guy and mentor and spend time with one guy who then could reach potentially millions of people, where do you sign up for a gig like that? And so
Wow. Yeah.
that's really what was motivating me. And so with I guess adding value, I didn't even think on those terms. It was more like, okay, I realize that they're going to be hopefully sharing some things, perhaps sharing things with me on a deeper level. I'm not going to run to the Washington Post, Washington Times to end up on the Tuesday front page of the sports section of that newspaper. I'm not going to allow any photographs, any autographs or anything like that with anyone I bring. And so I just knew there are certain things. Anytime we went out to play golf or go to dinner, I would always genuinely offer to pay. And so I wasn't there to take on any level, just to give. And I remember one night my wife cooked this whole big dinner, and I guess 5 guys and their wives were supposed to show up. Not one of them showed up, and not a word of, oh man, I forgot. It was just like next day. It was like, oh, that never happened. And so the average person coming in doing this would say, gosh, these guys are a bunch of prima donnas. In fact, what happens the first season, and I tell new chaplains this, there's no seminar you can go to. There's no book you can read. There's nothing people can tell you. You have to actually go through this. But the first season, you're going to be in awe. Oh, there goes Bob Lanier, or there goes Mitch Kupchak, or there goes whoever it might be, and Julius Irving. And so the players sense that. They have this special sonar, radar, whatever it is, and they can smell that a mile away. And so it negatively impacts, but you have to go through it. By the end of the first season, to begin leading into the second season, then you start developing a bad attitude, because you show up, you drive 45 minutes. It's all a volunteer position, and you drive 45 minutes and no one shows up. It's like, what the heck am I doing this for? And then you drive back home and you're thinking, what am I? And then the next night, no one shows up again. And then maybe the next night, 7 guys show up. You just never know. And so the second season is kind of a bad attitude developing. And then that bleeds into the third season. By the middle to the end of the third season, that's when real connection happens, because it's this sense of awe, the ups and downs, all that gets burned out. And it's not cynicism isn't replaced by cynicism. It's just reality. This is the way it is. And I heard later that a lot of pastors in the area wanted to push me out and get in. And, perhaps they didn't realize what this was all about, to just be present and not expect anything from them.
Wow. And see, I think that's a great perspective to come into, because what I kind of heard you breaking down, and I've been blessed to, coach at the highest levels. And these men, they do have fragile egos, but they do have spatial awareness. They are aware of what's going on around them. So to have that connection and to build that trust, here you are being super selfless. You're being a man of service and wanting to help others, but yet just physically being present and them seeing you be present day after day. Some of those barriers will slowly start breaking down, which you had to overcome.
And you know what? Something else, Scott. The biggest miracle of it all is that I survived 20 seasons, and through 6 coaching changes. Just think of that. I mean, you know
Wow.
what it's like. You come in, you clear the deck. In fact, if someone is really connected to players, you especially want to clear that deck,
Yeah.
because you want people of your own making, people you trust. And then 3 GMs survive 3 GM changes. So there's 6 and 3, all in
Wow.
20 seasons, and to remain in there during that period and then be able to retire on my own. I figure 20 seasons, that's enough time to move on. I mentored the other guy for 5 seasons to make sure that he was connecting with the players and they were connecting with him before I wanted to put it in good hands.
Yeah, wow. And again, there's a process to that, and there's so much time and energy and effort and emotional connection that is built up in those years.
Yes, and even in mentoring with the new chaplain coming in, it was done in a way that where I would actually show up. Many times when you mentor, if I'm not there, I can't make it, then he speaks. But I determined I was going to be there taking notes while he spoke, to send a message to the players that this guy is worth my time. And thereby, hopefully, you'll get a sense that he's worth your time, and to show
Wow.
deference. And then when I left, I didn't come back, to kind of like hang around and kind of throw shade on him. I wanted him to have total access. I didn't go to another game for 17 seasons after that,
Wow.
and I had to
Yes.
kind of be pulled into that.
Yeah, and so you basically just, showed that, hey, this is a guy of value, this is a guy of trust. You passed the proverbial baton and sat back and let him do it. There was no micromanagement, which again, to me, just shows your character and your heart. And I just think it's phenomenal to think of, yeah, because this business, I mean, it's so much about connection and so much about relationships. You've probably got friendships still today of people from even other franchises that you were able to connect with.
Oh, absolutely. In fact, during that period from 78 to 98, 20 seasons, there are so many. I mean, I interacted probably with most every player on some level during that period.
Wow.
And
Wow.
I see the book behind you from Mark Eaton,
Yeah.
and he became a dear friend. And every time I go out to Utah, he would show up at where I was speaking. When he'd come out here, I would show up to where, and we'd hang out here. And just the friendships that have emerged as a result, and they're
Oh,
solid friendships. And sometimes, Scott, and you know this better than most, is that the players, they don't really know, in some cases, for 7 to 8 years what the real motivation is of a person trying to get close to them. And so it's a very, they live in a very weird world. And at the beginning of every season, what I would tell the players, I'd say, you know what, you guys can show up in a mall and attract hundreds, maybe even in some cases thousands of people. But I said, do you have anything to, then my next question was rhetorical. I said, do you have anything to say once the crowd is assembled? And what we're going to do this season is we're going to work on the character aspect, because your talent has brought you here, and it takes character to keep you here. And if you
mm,
don't have the character, it's so easy, because the media and all the hangers-ons and all the relatives and all the different people, they're pointing to the character. I'm sorry, to the talent. And they're Nike and Adidas and all these shoe companies. Oh, maybe this is going to be our next Michael Jordan. To have a brand around, to build a brand around. And so there's always people looking for a piece, but to be in a situation where they they have someone that has no agenda, is not looking to 5 or 6 years from now, hey, will you invest in my business, or kind of setting the stage for something else, or can I use your likeness for something or something like that. It's just totally no strings attached. I love you unconditionally, and I'm here for you. I am virtually unshockable, and so let's do this. Let's see how this works out.
Wow. And see, again, I love how descriptive you are with that, because it is true. These multi-talented, highly skilled athletes are an elite 1%. And then, you got your NBA All-Stars, and then you got your Hall of Famers, which even makes it even less. I mean,
Yes.
because think about it. There's only 200 people in the Hall of Fame, and think of the millions of people who pick up a basketball around the world. So yeah, there's something very much a value of what you just shared, because you don't want anything from them. There's no expectations, but yet I'm just here for you, to be able to help you, guide you, assist you, listen to you. And listening is truly a skill.
It really is. It just, and I can't say I've always hit it 100%, but most of being a chaplain is being worthy of their trust.
Mm.
And that takes listening. It takes, it's harnessing the body language. It's harnessing the voice inflection. And sometimes, if I have nothing to say, I just tell them I've got nothing to say to you. I don't.
Yeah.
I have no wisdom. Silence is the only substitute for wisdom.
Right. But there's value in that. And I love that, because you know what? Players know fake and they know fluff. But yet, if you stand there with credibility and substance to what you're sharing with them, sometimes silence is the best, to just let them reflect on, what their thoughts are.
I find the most profound thoughts and ideas come out of silence. And
Oh,
sometimes it's just being comfortable with silence. It's almost it's a therapeutic value, if you will, for someone that is very comfortable with silence and will just be quiet. It's awkward at first, and then there's some of the greatest aha moments come after maybe 10, 20, 30 seconds of silence, which feels like 5 minutes.
yeah.
And then sometimes coming to a new understanding about something. And it could be just, someone is just has a great 3-point shooter, and then suddenly they're no good anymore. They can't seem to make it. And they're befuddled by that,
Yeah.
because when you're in high school, you're a superstar. When you go to college, you're a superstar. And when you come to the NBA, with some exceptions, like you said, that very small percentage at the top, you're a mediocre talent now. And some people who've been always the go-to person from high school, before high school, college, and now they're sitting on a bench, and it's just a totally foreign world. It's like, hey, put me in, coach. I'm the go-to guy. I've
Yeah.
always been that way. And it's just like, you look at the paper, the press paper, the beginning of before the game, and it says someone's not starting, and it's coach's decision. It's just like, even the player doesn't know many times why they're not playing,
Yeah.
and that can
Wow.
play with one's mind. And so, getting back to your point, the whole idea of being someone there who is worthy of trust by God's grace, and then to be able to help that person come to their own understanding about what might be happening internally.
Wow. Amen. Powerful stuff, Joel. Love the conversation. Ladies and gentlemen, again, you're watching the Coach Scott Field Show. We've got Joel Freeman on, sharing, his wisdom, his expertise, his experiences with us as the viewers, and very enlightening. Um, you talked about, of course, it was the Boston Bullets at the time, but you went through 6 coaches, 3 general managers. In your opinion, even though all the guys are great, who was probably the first coach to grasp and see value to what you brought, that he's like, you know what? I do trust, Joel, and I do know that he's helping these players be more comfortable in their own skin and getting them in tune with their spirituality and having faith, being faith based to help them on and off the court. Who was that first coach to really be like, Joel, you're my guy?
Well, I would say all of them. We had kind of a unique relationship. They had to, like when Gene Shue came on, or Jim Latham, or whoever it was coming on board, they had to get to know me, and so I would make myself available to them, for them to ask any questions they want, and to not hold back with me on any level, which they wouldn't anyway. But I would say probably Wes Unseld was still a player while when I started, so he had a unique perspective in the sense that he was experiencing me as a player, and then when we left that when he retired, Abe Poland, the owner of the team, he loved Wes, and so Wes then went to upper management, general manager, and then so he saw me from that perspective. And then when he became coach, he saw me from that perspective. And so there was a kind of a multi-layered view that he had of me. And so I would say that our relationship was probably the deepest. And
Wow.
there were times, when uh, when he and I would really go at it, and talk about stuff. I would never betray the player's confidence, and I told him that I would never would. And because I won't say which, but one coach wanted me to kind of share, any ideas and put it out there in the beginning in our discussion. Hey, if there's anything I can do to help. And I said, well, I will never share confidential information with you, but I will do what I can.
And see, that's great though, because the players, again, with that trust and respect, they're going to be more willing to open up and share
Hmm.
inner thoughts with you when they know you're not going to take it, to another man and share that information. So kudos to you for knowing and understand that. And when you're sharing that story, it triggers a thought. I remember watching an episode of Ted Lasso, and he was trying to get comfortable with the therapist. And it sounds like the same kind of
I think I
interactions
saw the
that
same episode.
yeah. So you were kind of sharing. I mean, it's almost a similar, parallel to what you were going through as well, to be able to be in and yet be of service to these, highly skilled athletes.
Hmm. And
Uh,
they're very, very sharp. The whole dumb jock idea is just completely passe. Some of the brightest individuals on the planet, that have been able to, like you and I have been able to be around and to talk with.
Yeah. Was there ever a player that kind of surprised you, that he was so faith-based and so spiritually strong? You're like, wow, I would have never have thought that. But once you got to know somebody, and and you're building that relationship, you're like, man, this is just a quality guy. And it kind of surprised you.
Well, I would say that uh, I don't like to mention too many names
Right, right,
in
right,
that
right, right.
regard, but I would just say that Julius Irving is one. I wouldn't say he surprised me, but I would say that he was the one that really set the standard at a time when there were very few chaplains in the entire league, and he made it very clear whenever he came to DC. He would always, I mean, you can imagine, surrounded by all kinds of journalists and
Oh,
beat writers and everything else, sports writers. And then he would, when I would come in and say, we got chapel in Studio B or whatever, wherever we were, he would immediately say to everyone, afterwards, I'll talk with you. But right now, I'm going to go to chapel. And they're going to go, what? He's going to chapel before the game, because this was so unusual at the time. And I don't know all of the stories surrounding him with the owners and the NBA itself regarding chapel, but
yeah.
my understanding is because of him that the chaplaincy program was able to be established in the NBA. And then when he would come out to the chapel, we'd always have maybe from 6:30 to 6:40, 6:50, 10 minutes before you had before 7. They had to go in. The coach would get them all charged up for the game, and then tip off at 7:05. So we had maybe 10 to 20 minutes, but he would always ask incredible questions. He would listen very thoughtfully. He'd lean over his body language, and there was just I just liken him. I just call him a prince of a man.
Wow. That's a wonderful story. And I'm glad you're able to share through a lens that only very few would get to view. And so, thanks for sharing that story. On the other side of that, and I'm just thinking again, and you don't have to share names, but was there ever a guy where, you could just kind of read his body language and you could just kind of tell by the look of his eyes that, he was going through something and you really wanted to reach, but could never quite reach him or really connect with an individual that you're like, I just know that I want to try to help this guy, but he's just not like-minded or open-minded to, receiving this type of service.
Oh yes, there's a lot of guys like that.
Yeah.
In fact, if someone was injured, you'd see that people handle the pain of their injury, and I'm talking about emotional pain. Physical pain is one thing, and
Yep.
the fear about what does this mean for my career and all the rest of it is a whole nother thing. But I found that some guys would lean more toward me and toward what we were doing, and other guys would pull away more during that time. And I
Yeah.
just think it's a very normal type of a situation. I never took it personally,
Yeah.
one way or the other. Like, oh, they're coming closer to me, so I must be doing something great, or
Yeah.
they're stepping away, and therefore I must be doing something wrong. I just kind of learned that this was kind of the grieving language that they spoke, and so at those times, I'd want to reach out to them, and of course, verbally, you can say as much. But they just had to kind of work through, and some guys after they retire, they would say to me, I wish I had learned what I've learned off the court. I wish I'd learned when I was on the court. I wish
Wow.
I had the same sensibility and the same sense of wisdom. But we all have to go through what we do go through, and then we sometimes have perfect 20/20 vision when we look back.
Right. Yeah, Joel. Wow, it's powerful. Ho- and I'm thinking, I'm putting myself in your shoes. I, I can't. I mean, you have to be so in tune, and you have to be so focused because I mean, here each team's going to have 13 players, and yet teams from the opposing team can come in, receive service, pray before games as well, and to be that focused, with these certain individuals and to build those relationships and see them on the road and, visit them in hospitals or, all the outreach that you would do. I can't imagine how gratifying it had to be for you to really have that connection with these individuals.
Well, it's I won't call it cynicism, but it's part of one of the gifts that was given to me over the many seasons is I had a lot of sense of awe burned out of me,
Mm,
and so that really has served me well when I've worked with heads of state and their senior advisors. So I've traveled to well over 55 countries, and I've
right.
had the privilege of meeting some very interesting people. And I can say that I have probably the only one that I would ever be in awe of would be Nelson Mandela, and I never
Wow.
got a chance to meet him personally. But meeting presidents and prime ministers and all kinds of kings and queens in Africa and all kinds of different places, um, this the what one of the things I received out of this is that these guys once they're just big kids,
Yeah.
and they just as my wife would say, they're little kids.
Yeah.
This
Yeah. Yeah.
this the sense of humor. In fact, as long as a player was treating me with deference, I knew I wasn't in with that person.
Yeah.
But when they started teasing me, then I knew I was in. And so I would do crazy things. I would tease them, And when I got a sense that we had a relationship was deepening and getting much more trust in the relationship, and I found that was a really great way to bond with them on a different level.
Yeah, and I'm sure those players loved it when you would playfully interact with them because again, now you're reaching them on their level, and now that comfortability is going to be there even quicker.
Oh yeah, and there's no filter. I mean, those guys will come straight at you, and they'll be playing jokes on you, and guys will be in the background laughing their heads off, and
Yeah.
they'll give you a nickname, and you have no control over the nickname they give you.
That's right. Oh, that's great. Well, and doing research and seeing some photos that you've had posted on your social media. George Murasan was a guest on our show, and I think of guys traveling from abroad and being a European player or a guy from Asia or South America. Did they have like a different mindset, or were they more in tune spiritually than some of the African American athletes? Or again, not to generalize, but did you just feel like a different sense from different players that were foreign players?
Well, for instance, like George, he comes from an Orthodox background, and so we had some good discussions. When he first came, he had to have an interpreter with him
Right,
at
the
most of the
Romania,
time, but
yeah.
yeah, but little by little, he was able to get on. Now he does very well with English, of course, and he was very slow, but his size, was just he just there's just nothing you can do when you're coming up against him. He puts his hands up. But I remember, and then Manute Bol,
Yeah.
he came from Sudan, and he comes, but you have the Muslim and the Christian part of Sudan. He came from the Christian part of Sudan, so he knew the basic tenets of the faith. But once again, um, he didn't have the ability to speak very well in English. So what happened early on is, he would come out to chapel, but I don't know how much he understood initially. But later on, as a year went by or so, then there was more of an interaction with him. Then later on, of course, before he passed away, we had some interaction, and it was much deeper. So you have
Wow.
dealing with the different backgrounds, yes, um, but it's just the love is the language that transcends all, and so that's basically the language that we talked, and
I love
spoke.
that. Yeah, good stuff. And again, so many thoughts are going through my head because I'm listening to your stories, and then I think of my dealings with like Coach Bernie Bickerstaff, and just spending great time and having good conversation, and talking about family, and talking about his experiences Puerto Rico and whatnot. And I'm sure when you get to talk with these guys, you get that same sense of like, wow, what a great guy, and what a great guy to be associated with, and I'm glad I get to have this relationship with these people.
Yeah, part of it, I think, as you're saying that, it's part of it's just being vulnerable with
Yeah.
them, because I left home when I was 17. I hitchhiked probably, I don't know, thousands of miles on this thumb right
Wow.
here, and
Wow.
long-haired hippie, a dope smoking fool, and I don't highly recommend any of that anymore.
Yeah. Yeah.
But the thing is that I've been around the horn a few times, and so when I came in, I had a conversion experience at 18, and my whole life turned around. So 7 years later, from being a long-haired hippie, I became one of the first chaplains in the history of the NBA. So one can just only imagine the amount of I had to confront the juvenile thinking, the juvenile behavior within me in order to function at the pro level, the NBA level. And
Wow.
so by sharing my story with some of the players, it made them that much more open. If a player had a problem with cocaine, uh, we now had I never did any harder drugs than hash or pot, and pot was not like today. You just don't know what they're lacing the pot with, so it's a total different experience today. But back then, I now we had some commonality of some sort, that I wasn't just a guy who just was kind of a hothouse religious guy, and just came in, go, gee, Willie, here we are, and we're going to talk about God and everything else. I'd been around the horn a few
Yeah.
times, and
Yeah.
so I think that helped to bring the melding of our hearts and souls together and our minds much quicker.
I see, and I love that because it took, like you say, vulnerability from you to share your life's journey, where you've come from, what you had experienced, that they could relate to and connect with you to strengthen that relationship. And then I think, in 20 years of being in that realm, did you do a lot of research when you saw, like, okay, well, draft day is coming up, here's these guys that they're drafting, how much information can I learn about them before they arrive so I know about them prior? Or was it more just, hey, they're here, I'm going to get to know this individual, find out about them through conversation? How did you take those steps?
Yeah, very good question. See, I'm coming from Alberta, Canada, a little town of 2,000 people with 9 ice hockey rinks. Just
Yeah.
imagine that, the per capita, per people per rinks.
Yeah.
And so I was on the ice from late October to early April every year,
Wow.
minimum 2 hours a day. So where I come from, sissies wear figure skates and play basketball. So that really helped me because, you know, uh, coming to the NBA, I didn't know anybody. Now, if you're talking about Boom Boom Jeffrey on or Stan Mikita or Bobby Orr, some of these other hockey players, then I would be my tongue would be hanging out, like, oh my goodness, here's
Yeah.
so and so. They would
Yeah.
be heroes since a little kid, but I didn't know hardly anybody to speak of, and so that served well. So when it came to working with the guys, it just kind of came naturally, and I don't even know where these ideas emerged from. But for instance, this is all pre-internet, pre-digital. So I just began to think, if I'm a parent, you got the Baltimore Sun, you got the Washington Post, the sports section. What if at the end of every season, I am cutting out all the articles about their son, and I put it in a manila envelope. I get the address of the parents, and I send them this thick envelope of all the articles about their son during that season. What a gift! What kind of gift is that to a parent? And so those are the kinds of things that
Wow.
I tried to do. So when it came to I was not an aficionado about basketball. I mean, now, after watching, I figure 20 seasons, 41, 42 home games, home and away games, or I get 40, 41, 42 home games. I don't know the
Yeah.
numbers
Yeah.
completely, but
42 at home, 42 on the road, 82
yeah,
regular season
okay.
games. Yeah.
And so, I'm going to all these games. In fact, now when people say, "Do you want to go to a Ravens game?" or I say, "Okay, I'll go just to hang out. I'm not that interested in going to another game." And fans don't understand that. So I used to leave after the first quarter
Yeah.
in a basketball game. But anyway, because I didn't like traffic. But to be able to I was not one that studied the players and try to approach it from that level with the player, because that's what the fans do. I was there primarily to find out who your parents, what's their number, because I knew that if I could get a hold of the mother of the player, I would then be able to put my special gentle thumb on the player about coming out to
Wow.
chapel. I'd say come out into when I come to announce that you've got chapel tonight. I'd point to some player and I'd say, "Hey, talk to your mom today. We had a great conversation." They're going, "What? You talking about?" Okay. Guess what? They were out in chapel that night. So,
Oh,
so I would use some of those mechanisms, some of those buttons I could push to get involvement and to connect the dots, with the parents and the players. But they knew
wow.
that anything they told me, I would never tell the players, their
Yeah.
parents.
Yeah. And again, and I'm thinking through all the skills that you're picking up with these social interactions with customer service and really picking up things that have helped you, have a life after your chaplainhood, I guess we would call it. But I mean, being an owner and an author, of multiple books, and I mean, the success has continued to follow you, and I see why. I mean, the attention to detail. I mean, let's talk about, even some of the books that you've written, and where that inspiration came from.
Well, the books that I've written, I've got, oh goodness, it's probably close to 18, 19 books in all. And some of those are co-authored textbooks, K through 12 textbooks. But most of the other books that I've written, I sat down one time and I made an inventory of where my counsel is in demand. And so a lot of the books I've written have come as more of time management tools, so that when someone calls me and says, "Hey, I got an invention or an entrepreneurial idea," so I have a special crap detector. I say, "Well, I've got a book called If Nobody Loves You, Create the Demand," subtitled "The Powerful." It's what is the subtitle on that one? It's about the powerful entrepreneurial. Um, I don't even
Yeah,
remember the title, a subtitle of my own book. But
yeah.
anyway, I say, here's a book. I don't care if I give it to you or you buy it off Amazon or whatever, but I want you to read that book first. It takes you about 4 hours, and then we can drill down to exactly what your needs are after you've read
Wow.
that book. So, and then if someone calls about, let's say, Afrocentric literature or some Afrocentric information, I have a book about, it's called Return to Glory, subtitled The Powerful Stirring of the Black Man.
Wow.
And so I want you to read that book first. That was endorsed by Julius Irving and just a host of other people. But I want you to read that first, and then we can talk afterwards. And then I also have a website called truthcentrism.com. That's truth, and then the CENTRISM, like Eurocentrism or Afrocentrism, but truthcentrism.com. I cobbled that together, gosh, about 12 years ago. It had over 1 million visitors. And
Wow.
it was my gift to the educational community, because I wanted to bring more light than heat to the debate between the Afrocentric scholars and the Eurocentric scholars. And I introduced the whole concept of truth centrism. So when someone calls me and say they want to go into all kinds of Afrocentric discussion, and believe me, I've gotten tons of calls of people that have been watching me from afar, just waiting for me to slip up or do, I don't know what, just making sure that I'm that my motivation is correct and everything else. But it's I bear that burden, whatever you want to call it, in a way that I know and I understand that I have a special responsibility to be truth centric in what I do, and not to bend the arc toward one political party machine or the other, and just to stay with the truth. And so so that I send people that website or read the book. Or we have, I just brought this here. This is the textbook. It's about close to 3 inches thick, and
Wow.
it weighs 5.5 pounds, and it has about 1,200 QR codes in it. As over, oh my goodness, probably, well, I can show you just kind of opening up here. You see all the images. It has over
Yes.
2,500 images throughout the textbook, and so it's just something that is a labor of love. I did this with Dr. Walter Milton, and he's one of the most incredible human beings on the planet. It just he and I worked for 2.5 years,
Wow.
and what emerged was this book. And then now we have K through 12, and then plus 15 college universities. So this is a kind of like a love letter that we have put together for the country and the world, and to be
Mm.
able, and we're just delivering the mail, and then to have people begin to interact with this. We have something in here that we call the elephant experience. I don't know if I can find one real quickly here, but the elephant experience is an opportunity. For instance, this one is the elephant experience about the topic of reparations. So here you see this hippy dippy funky looking elephant right here, and it's 40 acres and a mule, reparations, and the various perspectives. So we
Wow.
never tip our hand, whether we're talking about Uncle Tom, should we tear the statues down, scientific racism, black people in the deadly dance with both American political party machines. Can a white person ever fully understand the black experience in America? Manifest destiny, all these different topics. We never tip our hand one way or the other. Where there's a binary choice, we show both sides, and then we invite the reader into the Socratic method to begin to try to figure this out on their own. So we're not telling people what to think,
Yeah.
we're teaching them how to think.
See, and I love that because you're starting the thought process to let them assess for themselves, how do I really feel about this? And you're opening up the discussion. And I love that. I mean, that's such a passion of yours because again, you just want the truth to be out there to find, let people, find their own way.
Yes, and the five things that we invite people to is number one, we're inviting people to, that's a thumb. They're inviting people to uncomfortability, and it's like a thumb in the eye. It's uncomfortable, and the whole topic, whether we talk about lynching or redlining or whatever the topic might be, the struggle for civil rights, some of the legal decisions have been handed down from Dred Scott and onward in the mid 1850s by the Supreme Court. There, it is uncomfortable all the way around, and so in order to deal with uncomfortability, it takes courage. Like C.S. Lewis said, that courage is the basis, the foundation for all positive character values. So if someone is unkind to me or you, it takes courage to be kind back to that person. It takes courage to forgive. It takes courage to love. It takes courage to be flexible in an inflexible situation. And so what happens is we have developed a whole process that will help people become courageous to deal with the tough topics. And so the first thing that we invite people to develop the courage is to have we're inviting people to become critical thinkers, then to become compassionate listeners. 2 ears, 1 mouth. There's a parable there somewhere. Then to become fact-based, respectful communicators, and then finally to become action-oriented solutionists. That instead of problemizing all the time, and God knows we need to address the problems, hit them face on, look them right in the whites of the eyes, but then to search for problems, the problems, the solution to the problems. So instead of being problemizers, we are solutionizers.
Oh, love that, Joel. That's so powerful, and to me, it's fascinating to think of the years of research that went into these books to put facts out there to open people's minds to start the dialogue because that's the only way we're going to evolve and have growth is to have those uncomfortable conversations to help us all have a better understanding.
Yes, and it's I think just embracing the uncomfortability of life is a lot of what it's all about. One of my books is called "God Is Not Fair."
Oh,
The subtitle is "Coming to Terms with Life's Raw Deals." And I came out of a
wow.
very dark time in my life, and where I had more questions than answers. And I still have more questions than answers, but I have a more a different view about all of that. I don't need to know all the answers because I've laid the foundation and established that well in terms of what I believe and why I believe it and so on. So it's dealing with the unfairness of life. I think is paramount in marriage, in raising kids, in parents trying to or kids trying to deal with their parents, dealing next door neighbors, dealing in business, and all the rest of it. You know,
Oh,
it's addressing the unfairness of life, and where do we find it more but in the Black experience in America, the
wow.
unfairness of life, and so to it's like investing, Scott. You know, if you have a low risk investment, it's going to be a low return. Medium risk, medium return. High risk is going to be a high return. And so we have low risk relationships, medium and high risk relationships. My portfolio, my relationship portfolio is high risk, pretty much. And so, I've gotten some great high returns, and I've also gotten some things, I've had situations where I've been speaking with 5,000 people. I'm pretty much the only white guy in the audience, but I'm the speaker on Black history. And so,
Yeah.
then I have a time at the end. I don't call it Q&A because I have many answers. I call it Q&R because I will respond. But I've had open mic situations where someone will come to the open mic and just scream at me. And I've just always remained quiet. And always someone will pop up and yell that person down, or 10 people will pop up. But I always make a beeline for that person at the end of the meeting. And I've made some very dear friends out of that by going to the person who's screaming at me. And in those events, by the way, Scott, I start off the first, because the elephant in the room is what the heck, what's this all about, So I start off. I have a screen behind me, and I start off with I ask my first question. I don't even say, "Hey, it's great to be here." I just flew in from Baltimore, and boy, my arm's tired. And none of that stuff at the very beginning. But but what I say, I start off. I say, "How many people like cartoons?" And a few hands go up furtively, like, "Is this some kind of a trick question?" How about comic books? How many like comic books? Some hands go up. And I say, when someone is having a thought in a comic book or a cartoon, you have these little thought bubbles that go above their head. Then the big giant thought bubble above their head is showing what the person is thinking. And then I pause and I just survey the whole audience, almost to the point of embarrassment. It might probably no more than 6 or 7 seconds, but I just kind of look from the left to the right, to the right, to the left. I'm just looking at the audience, and I say, "Man, I'm seeing a whole lot of thought bubbles in this room." And then up comes, I have the little clicker, and up comes this on the screen, this thought bubble. And then the next one comes in, and in the thought bubble, it says these words: "What the heck is this white guy from Canada doing up on the platform with a microphone in his hand talking about Black history?" And just like you're doing, you're laughing. People who are very closed, body language wise, and just kind of looking at me side-eyed, are now opening up their body language, and people are laughing. And then I say, I let the laughter die down. And I say, "You know what? I don't have a very good response to that question." And I hope later on, when we have questions, and that's what I say, I don't call it Q&A. I don't have many answers, but I will respond. So we'll call it Q&R. That later on, when we have Q&R, I hope that you will ask questions. And please don't try to dumb your questions down because I'm a white guy to try to make me feel comfortable. Just come straight at me with whatever you're thinking, whatever ricocheting around your head. Come straight at me with what you're thinking. And then I say, let's do that. Let's let that be
Love it.
The atmosphere. And then furthermore, I say, the thing that we're going to do here today, I don't have, I can only explain perhaps even a thimbleful of what we're going to talk about today, but I will report to you what I'm hearing and what I'm feeling, what I'm learning. That's what we're going to do today. So that's first 2-3 minutes of every talk. And I found that has really helped to open things up. And then it gives me permission just to share my story. This is my story. Your story might be different. And it probably is, but this is my story. And this is what I am learning in the process.
Wow, Joel, fascinating, compelling, intriguing, I mean, just inspiring, all of it. We got just a short time. Again, share with the people where, they can find your books, where, they can get in contact with you to learn more from you, to, lead, guide, and mentor them. Because again, it's just fascinating. And I'm beyond grateful that you've taken this time to share with us today. So again, what's the website for the books, and how can people find you and contact you?
Well, probably the main one is, it's 4 words: joelspeaksrealgood.com.
There
So
you
it's
go.
Joel, Joel, joelspeaksrealgood.com. And then for this particular curriculum, it's the B and the H, bh365.org, not
Wow.
com, but BH for Black History, bh365.org.
Oh, love it. Joel, I can't thank you enough for your time and just your knowledge and experience and wisdom that you shared with all of our viewers and listeners today. I'm beyond grateful and humbled, and we got to have you back because I feel like we didn't even peel one layer of the onion. It's just fascinating to learn from you and the wisdom that you have for our viewers.
Oh, it's such a joy. I follow you rather closely on social media. I love what you're doing. I've watched a number of your shows, and I just am honored to be here. Thank you so much for the
Oh,
opportunity.
I'm equally honored, and this exceeded my expectations. So, Joel, God bless you. Let's have you back again to continue to share more because, again, we didn't even get into your journeys and the travel and all the things that you do. So, let's have you back real soon, my friend.
I'm wide open. Just let me know, and I will make it happen on this
Love it.
end.
God bless you, my friend. Let's stay in
God
touch.
bless. Thank you, Scott.